Welcome into the BBOC tailgate. I'm Tim Kalinowski, joined by Mike Calabrese. It's championship weekend, conference championship weekend. Calabrese, regular season is behind us. We finished the regular season at the number that I already flipped the page on my notebook here. We finished regular season 34-30-1. That is precisely 53%. You take out the push, right? That's how you do it. Hey, we're in the clubhouse. Winning year. Winning. That's the Mendoza line, right?
Yeah, it is. Obviously, we started hot. We would have liked to have been cooking up a better win percentage, but it's tough. It is trouble out there in the college football prop world because you don't get good information on injuries. In a lot of cases, some of these players just no show or they'll play 15 snaps. So we got bit by that a few times. But really just the variance was wild. Some of our winners you knew by the second quarter, and some of our losers, they didn't even get to half of the yardage needed. But for the most part, the only issue I had with the entire season is Garrett Green. He had one of the top 10 college fantasy football seasons. He was running in touchdowns left and right. I think I did an anytime touchdown on Green 2 or 3 times this year, and multiple times they got to the 1 yard line and it went to another player. So that's the only one I'm salty about. Everything else is positive vibes here in championship weekend.
Yeah, I completely agree. Those Green ones were absolutely. You probably bet the only 2 or 3 weekends where he didn't have a rushing touchdown. You probably found the only pockets there. And so I look at that, and I also, just to refresh, our preseason numbers, our preseason picks were Milton under, Neighbors over touchdowns, Hartman under yards, Penix over yards, Klubnik over yards, Benson over yards. Put that all together, we go 4-2 on the preseason numbers. So
yeah, really only one stinker there, which was Klubnik, and I'm not taking responsibility for that. I'm putting that on Dabo and not letting his new offensive coordinator they paid all that money for Cook. That was kind of unforeseen. And then Trey Benson clearly is a great running back. You saw he had really long receiving touchdowns on screen. So he was popping big plays. It just Florida State kind of had a weird timeshare that I wasn't anticipating with Trayshawn Ward off to K-State. A loss is a loss, but I'm just trying to, talk through some of the thought process there. But 4-2 on season-long props is pretty good.
Yeah, my Klubnik over passing yards last week was indicative of your preseason one. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. It was hard to watch. My guy, Cade, it's Garrett Riley. But you're right. Blame it all on them. It's not our fault. All right, Calabrese, since it is conference championship weekend, it's not, a million games to choose from, a million props to choose from. We're going to do some special series, some exotics. You can bet anything you want but a side or a total on a team. So let's roll with it. Kick us off here on conference championship weekend.
All right, let's start on Friday. I like an anytime touchdown, -138 in most of the market. I play this up to -150. Odunze, Washington's wide receiver. I made the argument earlier in the year when Penix was getting all the Heisman buzz. I think he is the best player on the Huskies. And when you look at the last 3 games, he is the definition of a target hog. He's got 31 targets in the past 3 games. He turned that into 337 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns, 2 in each. And we have the sample size directly against Oregon. He was targeted 12 times in that game. He turned that into a line of 8, 128, and 2 touchdowns against the Ducks. And I think the game script could be even more fortuitous for him in this one because I do think Washington's going to be playing from behind. So they're not exactly a team that focuses on the run game, but I think you could see them abandon it altogether. I see him nabbing at least 1 touchdown in Las Vegas. So like I said, I'd play this up to -150.
Your bet of the year in terms of a side, I know we weren't going to talk about it, but I'm going to break the rules here because it is the start of the postseason. It was Washington in that Washington-Oregon game. I know the spread's 10, but do you like your Huskies again here or what?
I like it now that it's at 10. I think the market's getting a little bit ahead of themselves. I understand from a game flow perspective. If Oregon has the lead, they're just going to run the ball, and Washington is in a lot of metrics outside the top 90, outside the top 100 in terms of success rate, stuff rate, all these different metrics that basically say that they're going to get bullied and pushed around by a really, really good Oregon offensive line and a very deep running back room. And Bo Nix can also chop it up a little bit. Speaking of Bo Nix, do you think his number on the rushing total is too low? I know that he's not somebody necessarily they get involved with, design quarterback runs, but he does run some RPO stuff. He is want to scramble. And Washington, besides having a really bad run defense, they do not get after the quarterback. So you're probably not going to see negative rushing yards against Bo Nix sheet in this one. Do you like his over?
Hey, well, it's almost like we talked before the show because I told you I'm on Bo Nix over. It's now at 12 and a half rushing yards. This makes you scratch your head at first and say because we think of Bo Nix as super athletic, capable runner, but his rushing numbers throughout this year are not that encouraging, and you can kind of see how that number got spit out. But like you said, Washington doesn't get after the quarterback. They average something like about over a sack per game, maybe. And Oregon doesn't allow sacks. They're number one in pass protection grade per PFF. So you look at that number, and it's one scramble for Bo Nix, a guy who is trying to push his team into the college football playoff and put a little stamp on his Heisman campaign. Also, too, if you think about it, the way that he's been heavily scrutinized, I guess, or when you compare him in the Heisman race to Daniels, and that a lot of his passes come from 5 yards or so past the line of scrimmage. But I think Washington is kind of take that away from Oregon a little bit. So if those receivers are running deep, maybe he's got more time to roll out and scramble. I think this is a really good pick. I was really surprised by this line. So let's go Bo Nix over 12 and a half rushing yards.
Let's keep it superstar themed here. You got Bo Nix, who's now the favorite to win the Heisman. How about the favorite to win the Doak Walker? That's Ollie Gordon, the second from Oklahoma State. Another minus 135, 130, 140, somewhere in that neighborhood, anytime touchdown against Texas. Why, for a guy who has been a touchdown machine, is his number, basically, hovering in that like almost getting close to even money kind of situation? It's because of the Texas run defense. Texas run defense is super elite, and they're even better in the red zone. But I think what's interesting in this one is that two things are going to be true. At the very least, for the first half, when this game is tight, Oklahoma State's going to funnel their whole offense through Gordon II. If you remove their blowout loss to UCF, they lost 45-3. It was a really weird game. The rest of his games, since he basically took off and became a feature back in mid-September, he's averaged 27 carries, 181 yards, and 2.5 rushing touchdowns per game. That's wild. So I don't care that, this Texas defense is really stout in the red zone, because not only do I know he's going to get a lot of touches, he also has more 40-plus yard runs than any running back in the entire country. And you have to remember, he barely even played in the first 3 games of the season. And then the last piece of it, I want a little bit of evidence that some running back out there can break through this Longhorn defense. Amani Bailey from TCU did. He ran for 98 yards and a touchdown in a near upset of UT just 3 weeks ago. So that gives me faith in Gordon here. I'm going to go ahead and ride the hot hand for who I think will win the Doak Walker.
Yeah, I understand Texas's run defense, but Oklahoma State, they just don't do it many other ways than the reliance on Ollie. And he's your guy, and he's delivered for you, unlike Garrett Green. So I can't knock the pick there. Are you going to correlate this all? I think you have a couple touchdown props. You're going to spit them all out into a parlay here. Should I let you cook before we go into the exotics here?
Yeah, I'm going to do one more. It's basically sitting at even money. This one is my favorite of championship weekend in terms of anytime touchdown. And when you add in Jawhar Jordan from Louisville to score a touchdown, this parlay pays plus 480. So Louisville cannot entertain an upset, and this would be a small upset. I think the spread is sitting at 2 at this point, but they can't upset Florida State unless they get a big game from Jordan. As I mentioned with OG2's big playability, Jordan's in the same class. He has 5 rushes of 40-plus yards this year. He's got wild agility and versatility in the open field, and he's basically a nightmare when he gets to that second level. He'll also have the benefit of running into a much worse run defense than Texas. Florida State checks in 95th in explosive runs allowed this season. You can burn the Knowles with a traditional running game. I think Brian Brom is going to dial up a ton of looks for number 25 in this ACC title game. And he has 8 games this year with 16-plus touches. And in those 8 games, he's cashed in 10 touchdowns. So I just don't see a game plan being built for Louisville if it doesn't feature him prominently. And really, it's the reason why I'm on Odunze, why I'm on Gordon II, why I'm on Jordan here. All 3 of these players are the key to the game plan here on championship, weekend. So this is it. I'm putting it all together, trying to get a big winner for our audience here at plus 480. We haven't done an anytime touchdown parlay all season, but the NFL guys are always spinning them out here at the Action Network. Getting a little bit jealous, so I want to get in on the action.
Tell you what, you should get a good game script in terms, you talked about it, tight spread. It's not, we don't, at least the odds makers don't expect Louisville to be playing from behind, a big number and having to chuck the rock and take away from, those rushing attempts. But also, too, I think I'm probably going to throw in a Brock Bowers anytime touchdown into this as well, make it a little sweeter. I think that there's a correlation between Brock Bowers and when the game matters and it's a big time game. Obviously, none bigger than the SEC championship against Alabama. I think saw his number in the short like 120, minus 120, minus 130 range, and put that together. I don't have a calculator in front of me as to what the anytime touchdown parlay would be, but I am who I am, and I want to make it fun and have a little action on every single game here. So I would toss Brock Bowers into that any touch time as well. And I don't even need to ask. I know you probably endorse that.
I do endorse it. I also just did the math real quick for you. It pays north of plus 950. So you're in the 10-1 range if you can get really good numbers out there in the market. Bowers, to me, I think it just depends on the health of Ladd McConkey. If McConkey can play, I think that forces the Alabama defense to play honest. They can't just double team Bowers because McConkey, as we've said on this show before, when he's healthy, he's the player that stretches the field, particularly in the seam. He can hit big plays. I think that'll create more one-on-one opportunities for Bowers, who could have played against Georgia Tech. I think it was just basically, he was more or less 75%, and they said to themselves, we're going to beat the Yellow Jackets, so why get him injured ahead of the conference championship game and the playoff push? So I think there's a little bit of, smoke that's misleading in terms of his injury. He came back. He looked good in his first game coming back from the tightrope, surgery, and I think he's going to be fine in this one. But McConkey's the one to keep an eye on. If he's a go, if he gets a green light in this game, then I'm in on the Bowers touchdown.
Yeah, I have a good feeling about McConkey. I think Georgia, they're probably one of the one teams in the country that can do the whole, hey, these guys aren't going to play, and then we're just going to turn it back up again. That's been the story of Georgia, this entire run that they've been on, this gigantic winning streak. Speaking of scoring, speaking of explosives, there's a game, UNLV and Boise State. And I know you're going to have a play on this. It's the Mountain West championship game. I'll tell you what, these are two really high scoring teams. And I found a little special here that you can play highest scoring team on Saturday of conference championship weekend. And why that's important on Saturday is that you don't have to deal with the Oregon-Washington game, which the total on that one in the 65 range. You don't have to deal with New Mexico State and Liberty, that total in the 57 range. So what you're left with, the highest total on the board on Saturday is indeed UNLV and Boise State. So you can play UNLV, highest scoring team on Saturday, plus 950. And if you're like, hey, well, Boise State could get their fair share in this game. I think I saw the action app. I think you might be on Boise State. So, hey, if you expect Boise State to have more points than UNLV, guess what? Boise State is 7-1 highest scoring team on Saturday. You can play them both, get a profit. Doesn't matter. Obviously, it's one's automatically going to lose if it is indeed the highest scoring team / game. So I like a little play there, plus 950 and plus 700. UNLV, explosive offense. Boise State lets up explosives, and then it's vice versa. Both of these teams are like, complete. They're the perfect mesh of giving up what the other team does well. Antithesis was what I was looking for. So yeah, I think that's a fun little play there. And again, you don't have to deal with the other high totals on the board there.
I would just play UNLV. I think they win this game. This is the game of the century for UNLV football. You could argue that this is the biggest game since their regular season finale against SMU in 1984, with Randall Cunningham playing both quarterback and punter for the Running Rebels. I expect to see Guy Fieri, Jimmy Kimmel, Flo Rida, all the big UNLV, alums in the end zone getting the Snoop Dogg treatment. And I'm going to play not only that one, you talked me into it immediately. I can't believe that number is so high on UNLV being the highest scoring team. Because they're
Calabrese too. I'm sorry to cut you off. This is a UNLV team. They score a bunch of points, and they played Michigan this year. Like that, you can almost, if you threw that out, it would look even more glamorous.
I mean, they played Michigan well. You could argue they played Michigan well, better than any other team than Ohio State in the entire Big Ten. I'm going to do that one, and I'm also going to throw another one on the fire here. Ricky White, the wide receiver for UNLV. If you go on the alternate for him to get 150 receiving yards or more, it pays just shy of 4-1. This guy has gone for 150 or more in 5 of his last 10 games. And he's up against a Boise State secondary that's 104th in Pro Football Focus rating in terms of coverage and 112th in explosiveness allowed. You mentioned it. It's a strength versus weakness situation. So I don't know. UNLV could be paying for Christmas presents for us, in the Kalinowski and Calabrese household, because at this point, I think there's a high likelihood that this turns into a shootout. And because of that, these numbers getting hung at 4 and 9-1, these are just gifts. So let's go ahead and get them under the tree.
Oh, be a running rebel weekend. But you did take, am I wrong? You did take Boise in the game plus the points?
No, I believe that was a Colin Wilson pick. I'm on the opposite
Oh,
side here. I like UNLV. I think they should be favored. I understand that for the most part throughout the season, and really since they moved to Allegiant Stadium, they've had very little home field advantage. I think that'll be different. This is the one time all the students are going to come out, all the famous alums, like even the local community. It's like this is the time. UNLV has not been good in forever. So I think they're going to get a raucous crowd for the first time this season.
all right. Well, shows how good of a host I am that I can't even read our own app correctly and tell you what you were on. So yeah, I mean, you said it. I don't think I'm going to even play the game. I'm just going to play, my two picks and your pick as well. Are we ready to move to Michigan, in Iowa here, or do you have one more?
Yeah, I think it's time to do it. We basically
Okay.
punted on this, pun intended, as long as we possibly could. So let's talk Michigan, Iowa.
I want you to start because I have a play off of yours. I have a play off of yours.
So I put together an exotic props piece for the Action Network. You can see it in our award-winning app where I go through and I'm trying to pick out as many, solid payouts, exotics as possible to basically spice up the Saturday because there's a lot of backup quarterbacks. There's a lot of games that have projected blowouts on tap. So you want to have fun with this. This is, the last Saturday before we get into bowl season. So how do you make Michigan, Iowa fun? Well, there's a way to get a payout at plus 325, which in my opinion is the most likely thing that's going to happen in terms of scoring in this game. It's Michigan to open up with a field goal. Iowa, I don't know if you know this, their first half scoring total is 0.5. That is the lowest in the history of Championship Saturday, dating back to the 90s when the SEC went to an SEC championship style play with the East versus West meeting in Atlanta. The lowest. So I have no concern whatsoever against the Michigan defense. That's lights out. They're incredible. Iowa's not going to score, so I'll put them on the side. Now, Michigan, are they going to score with a big play? Nope. They're 112th in offensive explosives, and Iowa's second in limiting offensive explosives. So they're going to have to methodically go down the field and then score in the red zone against an Iowa defense that's number 2 in touchdown percentage allowed in the red zone. I think all of this lines up for a 7 or 8 play drive, a couple, third down conversions, and then a field goal by Michigan to get started. Plus 325, I think, is a gift because in the market, it's minus 165 for a Michigan touchdown. I wouldn't take it at plus 2-1. Like you're telling me they're going to go down and open up the game with a TD against this Iowa defense. I don't see it. So I'll go ahead and take this one north of 3-1.
Yeah. So that's first score of the game, Michigan field goal. I will say this has the makings of a game that we look up, and it's because these two teams hold on to the ball for a long time. And obviously Iowa's defense, you mentioned it, that we look up and we say, oh, Michigan's only up 3-0 halfway through, after the first quarter or whatnot. And we say to ourselves, oh, is something happening here? And then Michigan eventually blows the doors off. So I like where you're going there, but I have a little twist to it. There's a market out there where you can bet first drive results, and it's both teams in a parlay. Iowa punt and Michigan. Yeah. Should be minus, 25,000. Michigan punt and Iowa punt and Michigan field goal attempt. They don't even have to make the field goal.
All right. Well, let me go ahead and guess because the Iowa one's a free square pretty much to get a punt. Field goal attempts. I don't know. What are we talking? 3-1, 4-1?
So take yours, which is field goal make, and then whatever the percentage would be that they possibly miss it. So you bump it up to, 450, but that's wrong. It's 7-1. So you're basically getting your bet at 7-1 plus a little, I guess, and protection on the possible field goal miss. So, I mean, I don't know how that got spit out. I absolutely love that bet. And hey, listen, if you think this game's going to be a snoozer, you got an excuse to hang on and watch the first quarter, however long this takes, for Michigan to methodically drive down the field. Iowa 3 and out will probably take about, 30 seconds. So then you can turn the game off if the bet wins or loses, and you don't have to watch the rest of it if you think it's going to be a blowout.
That's a real winner situation, turning this game off. I'm going to finish up here. The last one that I love, I get heckled a little bit in the company Slack channel because I'm Mr. Double Result, but I have held off basically the entire season. It's my favorite bet to make. The very first one I ever placed, I won at 10-1 years ago. So it basically got me hooked from the jump. Alabama to win the first half, Georgia to win the game, pays 6-1 out in the market. And in a lot of sports books, they're having this, special for championship weekend. almost all of them universally have some kind of special or boost on the SEC title game, and they will allow you to boost on this game. So you can take it from, 6-1 or plus 580 up closer to that 7-1 range. It's pretty simple. Georgia is the class of college football at this point. They've won 29 straight games, an SEC record. Yet at home against South Carolina, they sleptwalked through the first 30 minutes. They were down 14-3. They were tied with Mizzou. They end up, turning it on in the second half. They, same situation on the Plains against Auburn, a tie game. They end up scoring late in the fourth quarter to win it. When the chips are down, when the pressure's on, they have the better roster. They have the experience. I think their coaching staff does an incredible job with second half adjustments. Up against an Alabama team that I think has been playing better and better throughout the course of the season. They've been clutch in games as well. But Saban, ever since losing to Tim Tebow in the 2008 SEC title game, they played 16 games in Atlanta, whether that's bowl games or Chick-fil-A kickoff games or SEC title games. They're 16-0. And they played a lot of ranked teams, top 10 teams, top 5 teams. Atlanta's been a second home for him. So I think in terms of comfort level, in terms of getting the best out of his boys, I think Alabama's going to come out with their hair on fire. I'm hoping for that short 3-4 point lead at halftime. And then Georgia gets in a passion speech from Kirby Smart. Nobody believes in us. All of them drink the Kool-Aid. And then they go ahead and roll in the second half and get the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. 6-1, like I said, is ideally where you want to get it. I'd play it down to 5-1, but make sure to look out for those boosts to be able to jump that up into the 7-1 range.
Yeah, I think this is a good call. Georgia, has a habit against better competition to be a bit of a slow starter. Alabama, riding off of that crazy Iron Bowl victory. You can see Georgia saying, hey, we just basically, not sleptwalk, but didn't really have to be too engaged against Georgia Tech. Could that possibly?
That's another good example. They did the same exact thing against Georgia Tech, and they have the best point differential in the second half in the entire SEC, 10.2 points per game, in their favor in the final 30 minutes. And it's only improved throughout the season. As the competition's gotten better, they've become more focused in the second half. So I think this is a really good play and an angle to play on a double result.
Oh, I think we put together an incredible portfolio for this weekend. I think I'm super excited for it to go down, I like just having a little something on all these games as we sit down and watch them, because, it's a lot of them. You're not going to need your, quadruple TV setup, unless you're also watching, I don't know what else. Is the FCS playing Saturday too? I don't know.
Yeah, there's some FCS football. There's also college basketball. I'll be back soon on this very same channel talking college basketball player props before you know it. But let's get through football season first.
Fair enough. All right, there you have it. Conference championship weekend, bunch of fun, player props, exotics, parlays. Good luck to everybody betting the games this weekend. And that's enough for us. What we're going to do is for bowl season 2 or what? What do you think?
Oh, of course. We're back for bowl season. There'll be a lot of fun plays during the holiday. That holiday doldrums between Christmas and New Year's. You got to have some action on the game, and we'll be there to help you out.
Oh, it's my favorite bowl season. There's nothing like it. All right, that'll do it. For Mike Calabrese, I'm Tim Kalinowski. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. Appreciate it.